Some folks in the comments section of a video I did about the UBI had expressed concern that a UBI could cause inflation to go up, what with all that extra money in people's hands and such. And because greedy corporations raising prices, especially for essential goods and services, landlords too, jacking up rents because they can. And you know what? It's a legitimate concern, one most folks asked genuinely. So I wanted to do a follow-up video to speak about that specifically, even though I did reply to some individually in the comments. So first, I'm not going to sit here all naive and think that some businesses wouldn't be tempted to exploit the increased purchasing power of folks receiving a UBI. But here's some thoughts on the subject. A UBI would stimulate entrepreneurship and create new businesses, leading to increased competition. This competition would drive down prices as businesses compete for customers. And let's consider the likely impact of extra spending power on the supply of goods and services. In some circumstances, supply effects could potentially lower prices for basic goods and services. Here's an example. There was a basic income trial in India. The result was that villagers' increased purchasing power led to local farmers planting more rice and wheat, using more fertilizer, and cultivating more of their land. Earnings went up, and the price of food they supplied went down. Prices don't increase because people realize other people can pay more. They increase because there is increased demand relative to supply. And businesses want to sell stuff. The more demand that exists, the more they will attempt to supply that demand, keeping the supply-demand seesaw in equilibrium. We live in a market economy. More demand means that there's an increased market, and someone will move into the market to meet the demand. If one producer tries to increase prices, they'll be undercut by other producers who will gain market share, driving prices back down. Competition controls prices. But also remember, UBI doesn't alter the amount of wealth in the economy, it moves it around. So prices won't otherwise go up, because the major cause of inflation is an increase in the money supply. So let's talk next about rents and landlords. Think of it this way. Poorer people often live in certain areas because that's where more jobs exist, and they can get to that job using public transit or on foot. It's common today for rents to be higher in those urban areas where demand exceeds supply, and with stiff competition for jobs, employers can pay lower wages because the supply of workers far exceeds the supply of jobs. But with a UBI, perhaps that family can now afford a car and aren't forced to live in an urban area. They move out into more rural areas. The reduced demand for housing in urban areas drops, and that will lower the rents because supply exceeds demand. Sure, it might cause increased demand in rural areas, but with so much open space out there over the densely populated urban areas, the demand is not concentrated, and the increase in rents is unlikely to increase dramatically in a short time. And that doesn't even factor that more people could afford to buy a house, reducing demand for rental properties in the first place. And when they move to a smaller area, demand for other goods and services in the urban areas drops too. So in conclusion, concerns about businesses raising prices or greedy landlords jacking rents just because people all of a sudden have more money to spend, while legitimate, are very unlikely to happen. Hope that helps. Peace out. And if you're not already following me, you should. It's going to be a ride.